Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War Old Dragon Yells at Cloud event, in which the Venerabilax is added to the game. So this week brings a pretty nice Doom weapon. We finally ended up getting the third category of the Polearm weapons. We now have it for yellow, brown, and purple, with yellow of course coming in through this yellow Doom event. So we now have half of them, and over the next few months we will have the other half. One other thing that's pretty nice that ended up happening this week is we finally have one of the components to end up making that one ruby weapon that does a bunch of true damage and explodes for a bunch of mana accumulation and gold gain. That weapon has been money locked and is still money locked for probably at least a couple more months until the other two weapons rotate around, but we finally got the first one of the 3 components needed for it in the Soul Forge this week, so that's pretty cool. Anyways, let's start getting into all the things. Speaking of things that are actually useful, the troop actually is for once. Not only can you stock up on yellow blue arcanes if you need them for only 200 glory each, but the troop itself is very similar to that of Ihi Cattle. It does have a 3 higher mana cost and no storm. However, it gets to convert all brown gems to yellow dragon gems, and then gains a little bit of magic to all yellow allies. But basically, it does a immediate convert into dragon gems instead of just standard yellow gems. So that's pretty solid. That kind of makes up for the fact that it does have a 3 higher mana cost. And of course, it does it with Empower, so you can do that immediately. So now we have one for yellow, and green. As far as things that can end up doing that mechanic, as far as Empower into its own color. So hopefully it'll do some for not yellow soon, so we can actually go get all 6 colors with this mechanic. As we have already doubled up on yellow 2 colors in, so hopefully the other ones will rotate around soon. As far as event keys are concerned, it is a very confusing mess as far as what is in drop table, so let's go over that. So the things that are not in drop table are a mile long. Let's start from the top and work our way down. Diamantina is not in the event key drop table, it is from Soulforge. Horde Mimic is not in the event key drop table, it is from doing a billion Explore of any difficulty, though Spam Explore 12 would get you there the quickest. The Draconic Sentinel supposedly exists in faction, though I have not seen it, or sorry, not in faction, in Underspire. However, I have not seen it in months. They supposedly exist at a very small rate, but yeah, they are very rare. But that's from Underspire. The 4 faction troops from the Wyrmrun are from the Wyrmrun faction. And I feel like there's one other exception I should probably add. Let's see, is there any? Is that it? Is that the whole list? Oh yes, and Periton is currently unobtainable because there is no Guild War. So that is the whole list. Periton from non-existent Guild War. The 4 faction troops from Wyrmrun. The Sentinel troop that is supposedly in Underspire eventually, someday. The Horde Mimic, which is absurdly rare from Explore of any difficulty, though Explore 12 would get you there the quickest, and Diamantina from Soulforge. Those are all not in drop table. So what is in drop table that's worthwhile? Honestly, not much. A lot of stuff here really isn't used these days. Huntmaster was good before they nerfed all Journey troops into the ground. There is 50% Mana Star for dragons, however, its ability is absolutely abysmal. Though it does have some okay traits, having both Yellow Storm and 50% Mana Star to all dragons. There's a few utility troops like Divinia, though it's not really used over other options. There's a few Elamagrim-like troops, mostly Elamagrim and Ishtara, though neither of them are really particularly good now that you could just use the Void Dragon that ended up coming in, a couple months ago. And honestly, that's basically just better than either of the other two. And yeah, for the most part, everything that's good here is locked behind some kind of weird piece of content, like Diamantina, for example. So for the most part, you're not really opening event keys this week unless you're trying to get Dragon's Claw to a specific star level. And of course, it's pretty much locked at level 26. I think it can reach like 28-ish right now. However, it is locked behind needing a billion deeds. So unfortunately, can't go quite to get that. As far as the Tower of Doom is concerned, it is the same as per usual lately. You earn double score for using the weapon, so 100% use the new weapon. In order to get it, you do have to spend 500 gems. It is possible to get it from Soulforge too, however, it is much better to get the other weapon that's currently available this week from Soulforge, plus it is way cheaper to get this for 500 gems compared to getting it for the Soulforge cost. So I do advise doing that if you have the resources to do so, as is a really solid weapon. It's basically like the previous Doom weapons, the previous Journey pre-nerfs. It deals a bunch of damage to the first 2 enemies, boosted by tempering level, so if you have it fully maxed like we do right now, that'll end up being an additional 20 damage per unit for 40 total damage, and then it creates a bunch of yellow based on how many yellows are on your team and the enemy team. So if you have 4 yellows, you'll create 8 gems, and if there's somehow 16 yellows in play, or sorry, if there's 8 yellows in play, you will get 16 mana accumulation from it, which is pretty substantial. And while that will go down by 4 once you get a double kill, that is still pretty substantial if you're running it for a pure yellow restriction. of any kind. And also a little bit more relevant during the Doom event, it does get to gain a random status effect. Though in normal battles that will never happen, but during a Doom event that is always going to happen on the final fight as far as the battle. And of course, as per usual, actually, has anyone in my guild actually reported back yet? I don't think they have. But basically, just report back any of the better rooms to your guild, fireballs, heroisms, unlocks, luckies, anything else that you want to report back to your guild. As while it's not the same from guild to guild, like across the entire game, within your own guild, every single room is the same. So all 30 people in your guild will have the same room layouts. So make sure to communicate what your better rooms are so that you don't waste as many sigils and only go for the better ones that your guild wants to go and tackle. Anyways, as far as other things that we have going on this week, this Tuesday we have our self-the-faction event of the red-yellow restriction for Wyrmrun. Wednesday we're going to be having the Dragon Pet for Dragon Bonus. Thursday we have the class event for Dragonguard, which is okay hero class, generally only really used if you're using a 4x Dragon team, but still really good nonetheless. And of course this weekend, I actually forgot to mention at the beginning of this video, but of course we got a Vault weekend this weekend, so definitely make sure to grind if you have the time, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday this weekend. Aside from that, next thing, Soulforge. So there is a couple useful things to mention in Soulforge. I actually forgot to check the troops, but it is worth mentioning that High King Iron God is here. I think we even show a team with him this time around. Of course, High King Iron God Zolgoth combo, really solid, though you can get Zolgoth whenever. However, High King Iron God might not be available again for a while, so I do highly advise getting this. Honestly, as a newer player, I would still consider this one of the best first mythics to get. I know earlier on in the game you have a way lower attack stat, but there are ways around that. As far as things that could just boost up its attack directly, or even just using it in factions in general, which is normally when he's ran. You'll have a much higher attack than you normally do in standard fights. And overall, just a really solid troop for insta-killing. A lot more accessible than Zolgoth when you're first starting out as well. But basically, anything that can be devoured, he just auto-kills. It's based on his attack value, and once you get your first devour, you're almost guaranteed going to have at least 100 attack, as long as it's not entangled or anything. In which case, you could just go and attack every single thing, and you will get 100% devour rate, assuming they can be devoured. And even if they can't, you can use Curse and other similar mechanics in order to make sure that you can end up devouring them. And on top of all that, he gains extra turn, so highly advise getting him if you don't have a copy of him. He could even be your very first mythic, and it'll still be worthwhile. There are a few things that you might want to go for as first mythics in the current state of the game, like 2 to 3 Iron Hawks and stuff like that. But if there is any one singular one that I still feel like is really worth it to go for really early as either your first or one of your first few, it's definitely High King Iron Gut. So if you have some diamonds laying around and you don't have High King Iron Gut yet, I personally would go for it. It's really good once you want to finally start taking out the underworld battles and go get all of those to level 500 factions, or at least for his 2 corresponding colors, or 3 I mean, of blue, yellow, and brown. So, as far as weapons are concerned, there is one exceedingly important weapon that you do not want to leave this week without, regardless of what point you are within the game, and it is the Dread Arquebus. Arquebus. I don't know names of guns. But this thing, not because of its ability, you just deal some damage to an enemy boosted by booty gems and then explodes 4 gems. Its ability, pretty bad overall. That's not why you want it. The reason you want it is this weapon right here. The Ruby, I can't pronounce that word without YouTube demonetizing us. But the Ruby weapon requires 3 components. The Blighted Lands Dread Cutlass, the Broken Spire Lodestar, and what we have available today, as well as all this week, the Dread Arquebus. Arquebus sounds right. That one. But this one's available this week, and this is the first of the 3 components that you can end up finally getting for this as far as free-to-play is concerned. This was available from the campaign, gosh, I want to say 2, 3 campaigns ago. I want to say 15, 14, somewhere around there. But basically, if you didn't end up paying $10 or more, or, either the tiers for the campaign pass, for the previous campaign, or for the 15th, whatever one this one was. If you didn't end up doing that campaign, either you skipped that one, or you're just completely free to play. These weapons have not come back yet, a single time. Until today. This is now the first one you can end up getting from Dragon's Claw, as it's Dragon's Claw week. And now we just have to wait on Broken Spire and Blighted Lands. But once those 2 roll around, you'll be able to go and eventually craft this weapon. Even if you don't plan on getting this anytime soon, because it requires 1,000,000 gold and everything else, the actual components for it aren't nearly as bad. It's only 15,000 souls and a few other knick-knack loot. So I highly advise making sure to get every single one of these components before you end up needing it. This also applies, though not to this week, but it also applies to things like the Dustbringer. You should always be buying up these components as the events go around, as they're relatively cheap to get, and if you're going to try going for them once you actually want to go get the weapon, it could take around a year before all of them rotate. So you should always be getting them way in advance. So even if you don't plan on getting this ruby weapon anytime soon, it is a pretty good weapon. Do make sure to at least get this weapon, so when you do eventually want to go for this weapon, you'll be able to go and already have the components. And if you already have all the 3 of the components, then you can just go at a later point craft this, even if you don't intend to immediately. Do make sure to go get those weapons. Anyways, let's now go over all of the teams related to this week. Let's see, let's go to our collection. Start all the way from the top. So, first one we have here is for Yellow Doom. Obviously, Yellow Doom is a yellow restriction. However, you also are restricted to have to use the... Well, not have to, but you get double points if you do. For using the Doomed Spear, which you need to spend 500 gems in the current Doom event in order to obtain. You can also get it through Soulforge, so it is way cheaper doing it through 500 gems. Plus, it helps out your guild more. With this, I am running Stellaryx here. However, obviously, if you don't have Stellaryx, you can downgrade it for your next best dragon damage output here. Basically, whatever best yellow dragon you have that hits all enemies will be perfectly fine, whatever that happens to be. I just have Stellaryx here because we have it, but if you don't, just use your next best option. We're using the 50% Essentia in order to give our entire team 50% mana start, and of course, we're using a new dragon in order to go get that immediate convert, getting a bunch of mana, and filling into everything. And of course, regardless of your team, you're basically just spamming a Doom Spear until you win, though you can also go for other damage sources if you want to prioritize them potentially more, especially for earlier fights, where you can get away with actually tanking with it. For pretty much everyone else, you're just going to be doing spamming Doom Spear until you win. As far as that layout, really depends what you want to do. In this case, we're running both the 2 Empower troops, both Venerabilax, which converts brown to yellow, and the Ihi Cattle, which converts blue to yellow, while also having Storm 2 times over. Not only does he start with it, but he also does it when he does his ability, basically being Perpetual Yellow Storm. I also end up going with Stormcaller here, which also has Perpetual Yellow Storm. One of the reasons for this is there's a 25% chance to summon a Hero Nymph, which is a yellow troop, which would allow you to still maintain your full yellow. Even when this dies, it'll become a different green-yellow troop. And then you'll still have the full boost ratio for your Doomed Spear in order to keep getting all the mana accumulation from it. So you'll get at least 8, based on even more, based on how many yellow enemies are on the opposing team. As far as Sister Superior is basically here to cleanse off Death Mark or any other annoying mechanic. And both of these are just for your starting mana in order to go all in on Spear. You can end up replacing out one of these for a damage source if you happen to have a higher rarity option. Like, obviously, if you have a Diamantina, definitely put that on your team. If you have Stellaryx, put it on your team. Obviously, if you just have any upgrade, put it onto your team. But this is assuming you don't have anything above a epic rarity troop, in which case it's probably not worth doing a damage source and just going all in on your Doom Spear and just giving as much support as possible to keep spamming Doom Spear until you win. Next, we have ourselves the faction teams. These use yellow-red, though of course you are still allowed to use any colored weapon when it comes to Underworld. As far as the first team, pretty standard are Guards, Avatar, Sir Quen Hadley, just using the Ihi Cattle as our mana accumulation. You can also use Harp Mage or similar things. For our higher rarity team, this is where we actually end up utilizing the High King Iron Gut, the good old High King Iron Gut Zolgoth combo. A little bit of a different order than I normally do it with. Also, I meant to do Mech here, not Titan, because of course the whole point of using a Bork there is that you can get the 50% mana star off of Mech Hero class from its final trait there, in order to give both of them 50% mana so you can get the mana accumulation quicker. You can also go the other way around, really depends how you want to go and mana accumulate for it. The long story short, it's basically this High King Iron Gut Zolgoth until we win, and that is the game plan there. As far as the pure faction is concerned, there are 2 main ways that you can run it. Either just spam a billion Great Worms and hope your skulls land, or go a little bit safer route and run with a little bit of a bulkier tank. This guy gains a bunch of attack and armor every time he does his ability, also exploding some gems, so he gains both attack and a durability. Any troop that does this in Underworld, is a pretty auto win, while also having 50% score reduction. Ends up working out pretty well. And he has a small chance to end up creating a skull every single time, and all these have a guaranteed chance to create 2 every single time. The only really big issue with running any kind of team here is you're generally going to be spamming a lot of Great Worms, and the big issue with him is that he's creating a ton of skulls per turn. The reason why this is an issue is the enemy on the final fight will most likely be doing substantially more damage than you. So there's going to be a lot of chip damage that you're going to be taking off your skulls, but it basically just means you have to keep casting this a little bit more often to make sure he doesn't die. In this team, you really want to make sure you have the Terror Worm surviving all the way into your final fight. You could even double up on it if you really want to play it safe, but you do at least want to have some amount of Great Worms, so you can end up chipping them down, both with skulls as well as just the AoE damage that it has, so you can keep hitting them ever so slightly. Next, we have the Dragonguard hero class. This requires using dragons specifically from Dragon's Claw Kingdom. As far as what we have for options here, we do have access to the Empower that we end up getting this week, new dragon. He ends up converting brown to yellow dragon gems, and then you just get your huge amount of mana accumulation. Everything else is basically here for mana. Sends here for 50% mana start, a little bit extra mana link going into it with the red, and just going all in on Dawnbringer. If you don't happen to have Dawnbringer, whatever your next best AoE option is, ideally focused on a yellow, so Dancing Daggers or anything like that ends up hitting all enemies would be perfectly fine. Next, we have ourselves the Underspire. Underspire is restricted specifically to the entirety of Dragon's Claw. This is a little bit different than the other one because it does not require... well, even though you would probably be using it, it does not require using the Doom Spear. However, realistically, all your teams are going to be utilizing Doom Spear. There's a couple of reasons for this. Also, you might be noticing I'm using Dragonguard on a lot of these teams, even though we don't necessarily need to be doing so. One thing I don't always mention these days, because ever since they nerfed it from 50% to 20%, hasn't been as good. However, we have double bonus this week. It is from Dragon's Claw. So you can end up getting a ton of additional damage from doing this combination. There are actually a lot of things from this kingdom that are obviously dragons. Almost the entirety of this kingdom are dragons. The sad part is Diamantina, even with 20% extra stats, is still weaker than Stellaryx. Though in all fairness, he does have 10% stats this week. Oh yeah, Stellaryx is even more broken this week. Good luck on PvP, by the way. Oh gosh. You thought Stellaryx was bad before. Wait till he has 10% more everything. But, yeah, there's a lot of troops that have 20% extra from Dragon's Claw, as almost the entire place is dragons. So you do actually gain a lot of benefit from using Dragonguard this week. 20% more magic, as well as all your stats, but most notably magic. So that's the whole reason why we're end up running down that route, even though we technically don't have to go all the way down that route. Especially for some of the other modes, but in this mode, it works out a little bit better. This one, we are going down a little bit more of the Yellowstorm route, since we can't end up using Ihi Cattle, as Ihi Cattle is not from... the kingdom. So we're end up going down with a double of the new troop and using Egg Thief to keep resummoning yellow troops. Egg Thief, unfortunately, itself is not a yellow, but it does keep resummoning ourselves a bunch of yellow, so we can end up going down that route. And of course, if you don't want to do that and you want to go down a different mana accumulation route, you can simply just use the class perk in order to get your resummons, if you still need it. This will count as a yellow to maintain your full boost ratio for your Doom Spear, so also worth considering going down that route with the perk. And that's pretty much everything. And then we just have a pretty standard Vault Event weekend. Just grind that out with whatever best quick kill team you have for Explore. But anyways, guys, that'll wrap it up for now. If you still have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. All the teams that we just went over will be in the description if you want to go and copy paste any of them. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I'll catch you guys later. Goodbye, everyone, and thanks for watching.